Good time of day, guys! My name is Godzi, and welcome back to another episode of Higurashi When They Cry console arcs. Last episode, we continued Saikoroshi as Rika broke into the ritual storehouse and found Hanyu through this little orb, which was called the Kimura no Mikoto something or other, I don't know. I don't exactly remember. It was like something more like Kami no Mikoto no Ri or something like that. I think I'm close, but whatever. Yeah. So, since recording last episode, I've posted episode 1. I meant to actually say last episode it's going to be harder to talk about any comments I get when I'm pre-recording, and also, even if I'm not pre-recording multiple episodes in a row, which I don't plan to do too often with this series, just for that simple fact that this series is probably going to get more comments than my usual series. Since I'm recording them ahead of time, it's like yesterday's, was the day the first episode went up, and it went up at 4 while, I was at work. So I recorded episode 2 earlier in the day, and today I don't have work, but, there's no guarantee comments are going to spawn at, 4:15 or whatever. But regardless, I'll probably talk about comments every 2 episodes as they come, instead of the usual 1, because, it's every day now instead of every other, but hey, who knows? You never know. But yeah, I got a couple things I want to talk about, therefore, since I got a comment on the first episode that gave me a little bit more insight into where all these arcs came from, for one, and where to go after these 3 Rei arcs. So I was informed that these arcs are not... Saikoroshi, the Rei arcs in particular, aren't console arcs per se. These ones were actually written by Ryukishi and had their own PC release. I do not know yet if it was before Umineko release. For some reason, I remembered them saying the date 2009. I just got the comment up. No, they did not. They did not say a year. But Rei, Ho, and Ho Plus, the arcs off of those aren't console arcs, but they were adapted into the console games, and therefore Ryukishi wrote these, but not the other console arcs. Which, yeah, that makes sense, because this still feels like it has the same writing style. I didn't even particularly know that the console arcs weren't written by Ryukishi. I just kind of figured he wrote all of them. But, I guess if I had known that, I did think either Ryukishi definitely wrote this arc, or whoever did is really good at emulating his writing style. But, yeah, regardless, I was told that. I was also told the English names for all 3 arcs in this one. So, this one, Saikoroshi, is called Dice Killing. The next one, Hirokawashi, is called Daybreaking. And the third one, which the name really scares me for, Batsukoishi, is Punishment Loving. That name terrifies me. I feel like that can go one of 2 ways. Either really over-the-top gore, or more uncomfortable than that, in a different direction. We'll get to that when we get to that, though. Thankfully, we have arcs that aren't fucking ridiculous first, presumably. I don't know what Daybreaking could imply, but either way. I was also informed the clinic background, they did change it to say Takano, which is very cool. I guess I kind of should have figured, since these games all released in Japanese first, because then you'd have Japanese players being like, that still says Irie, you fucking lazy artists. But yeah, they did actually change that, which is very cool. Even if it's a detail I personally wouldn't notice. So, yeah, then I was told the arcs that I should do after these three, so we'll do these three in a row, are the Ho arcs, Outbreak, which I do recognize from a Higurashi OVA. That's the zombie one. That's gonna be real fucking fun. Kamikashimashi, which is... I don't know what that could mean. I wasn't told the English name for that one. And something called Hinamizawa Bus Stop. I guess the conversation from Mayakashi is going to take up a whole arc. That's going to be cool. I'm sure it's different from that, but yeah, regardless, that's where we'll head after that. And yeah, but I do have one more thing to talk about before we get into reading. And that's, guys, I figured it out. I know where the fragment is, I think. I'm like 99% sure. I'm tempted to go into spoiler time. That's how confident I am in where the fragment is. But since I don't 100% know, and there is still the chance I could be wrong, I'm not gonna go into any sort of spoiler time. I feel like that would kind of defeat the purpose since it's just my theory. And so how do I put this? So we'll start by eliminating where it doesn't make sense for it to be. So Hanyu already said that Rika doesn't have it. And that leaves any other character. It's not going to be in some new person we've never heard of. It's not going to be in some random side character. It's obviously not going to be in, like, Kimiyoshi or Oreo or wherever Shion or Keiichi are. They haven't shown up at all. It's probably not in Rena or Mion, or I guess Rena or Mion. So the only other characters involved in this arc are Rika's parents and Satoko, and I guess Satoshi, but I don't think it'd be in him. So I would say it's not in Satoko. Sure, she's like the one factor that Rika is saying, feels a little bit off, but I don't think that's why she feels a little bit off. And then as for Rika's parents, they don't have sprites. They don't have fucking sprites. They're not gonna have the fragment. I know that's like kind of a weird loophole, but then like if it's not in Satoko and it's not in Rika's parents and it's not in Rena and it's not in Mion, who does that leave? Yamamoto, who doesn't have a sprite? Chie? And it's not in, our protagonist, so who's that leave? I mean, if it's not in Bern Castle... It's in Rika. It's absolutely in Rika. Because she was saying all this last episode about recognizing this world's Rika as her own being, which means she is separate from herself. And she just kind of took over her body. Now, I don't know how the fucking rules of the orb and the communication with Hanyu works. I mean, she does say, your voice is distant, but, I mean, since, we'll say, just to distinguish, Bern Castle is different from Rika in this world, then Bern Castle would be able to talk with Hanyu, but it's a little iffy because she's in Rika's body. Does this make sense? I feel like this makes sense. But then what feeling is that? Well, when you look at everything in this world, there is one huge disparity. Everyone is happy, right? Everyone. Rika's parents are alive. Satoko and Satoshi's parents are alive. The dam project is happening, but there's no conflict with the village over that. Rena never had her past where she got rid of the icky I in her name. Mion's chillin'. Satoko's chillin'. Satoshi is chillin'. The one person who isn't is Rika. The only bad thing in this world is that Rika doesn't have friends, and she's socially isolated, and she's continuing to socially isolate herself. So in essence, the fragment is still kind of in Bern Castle, but it's in Rika. And the feeling that you have to quash in this case is giving Rika friends. Therefore, because the theme isn't gonna be Rika has to kill somebody. Like, the person who needs to win in this world is Rika, not Bern Castle. And it fits with the theme of friendship, and it is also showing something Bern Castle would therefore need to learn. That since she got through all the other, not all the other arcs, but Matsurebayashi, by getting her friends together, trusting her friends, and creating a miracle despite the fact that they've done all these horrible things in other worlds under the effect of Hinamizawa syndrome, but I digress. Rika's still Rika. Bern Castle is still Rika. She still has that past. This is still her, but a different version of her. And she's said on several occasions, Rena is still the same person, even though she hasn't dealt with all this trauma. Mion is still the same person. Satoko and Satoshi, I don't think she's explicitly said that, but they're still the same people, even if this is a different world where Rika doesn't have friends. They're still the same people, and it's still the same world, just with different dice rolls that are unfortunately against Rika. It's not the world she wants, and it's not the world Rika in this world wants either. I think I've made my point clear enough. The fragment's in Rika, and Rika wants friends. It's as simple as that. So Bern Castle has to destroy that emotion by getting her friends. There's no more pining for friends if you have friends. So instead of continuing to distance herself from Rena, from Mion, and continue this conflict with Satoko, and run away from Satoshi when he tries to apologize for her, she needs to befriend them all. And I feel like the way this arc will end is that she'll create the club. I think that's what's gonna happen. So yeah, let's see how fucking right I am. Let's go. I never expected to have these long-winded preambles to these videos ever again. But yay, I figured it out. And it's what's gonna be really disappointing. Since this is, Higurashi Ray, the game, I can only imagine this arc was in the Ray OVA anime, but I completely forgot everything that happened in it. So I don't fucking know if this arc was in there. It must have been, but I forgot everything about it. So you just have to trust me that I'm basically figuring this out for the first time. I was 15 when I watched that. I am currently 22. So, Anyways, let's figure this shit out. I need a drink of water. Also, not drinking orange juice anymore because that shit made my mouth water like crazy, even though I love it. Hard to talk after swallowing orange juice when I, have a fountain going off. So yeah, let's go. Thank you for making my food all the time. Nipa. What's this all of a sudden? Mother's Day was a long time ago. As I thanked my mother and patted her shoulders, I brushed her head. It was all a show, of course. If she had the same power inside her as Hanyu, then by touching her like this, I'd be able to sense it, even if it was feeble. If I did feel that power from my mother, could I kill her on the spot? I wouldn't hesitate to kill, but I couldn't say I wouldn't hesitate right here and now, because I would rather she not have that power inside her. And at the same time, I was uneasy about what to do next if she didn't. My mother laughed like it tickled, but contrary to what she thought, I was carefully checking if I needed to kill her. Thank you. You've made your point, so please get off. It tickles. My mother told me that was enough, smiling in a way that was not as dissatisfied as her words implied. Even after being so scrupulous about touching her, I couldn't feel any trace of the power. My mother wasn't the one who held the fragment, and I'd already felt my father's head. It wasn't him either. They don't have sprites after all. If it wasn't either of the two people closest to the legend of Oyashiro-sama, then it was improbable that the fragment was in a person. It was a happy thing, not having to kill anyone, but that meant one of my clues was now meaningless. And yeah, also, therefore Rika is still close to the legend of Oyashiro-sama. She's not the queen carrier, she's the carrier of the fragment. That said, even though the possibility was unlikely, I'd still have to touch the heads of the other people in the village every chance I got, just to make sure. And at the same time, I had to continue my deciphering of the pile of documents in the ritual implement storehouse. Whichever I was supposed to choose, the labor of reading through that entire mountain or the sin of killing someone, I was going to need much more than a little time. Time for Squala? Are we gonna get some breadcrumbs to lead to my theory being inevitably correct? I don't know what thematically it could be other than that. That's why I say 99, because I don't know for sure, but it might as well be 100. I'm like damn near positive. I had lost track of how many mornings it had been since I drifted to this world. And this morning was frustratingly the same as the last world, the one I knew. They said next Sunday was the Watanagashi festival. This was the first time I didn't care whatsoever about it. And by then you're gonna have the club together and you're gonna hang out, and then you're gonna feel bad about leaving the world, but you're gonna leave the world behind to a happy Rika who has friends. Right? For Hinamizawa, facing total eviction by next year, this would be their very last festival. They were apparently planning to put on a magnificent show to end things with. My normal world responsibility of performing a dedication dance as the last survivor of the Furude family didn't exist in this world either. Still, I wasn't expected to simply go off and have fun. They would have me help with things that kids could help with, like giving out boiled rice and answering the phone. Why do you call it boiled rice? How else do you make rice? Even in a rice cooker, isn't it still with water? How else do you cook rice? I mean, yeah, you can saute it, but then you're still boiling it, right? You're still putting water in it. I'd gotten used to going to school alone, too. When I went to school with Satoko, it was always a lively morning, with us running and falling everywhere. But that, too, was beginning to feel like a memory of the distant past. With several days already behind me and my mind settled, I'd stopped crying about small memories like that. Everything I did was for the sake of returning to my original world. I might curse the trouble it was taking, but I would never cry again. But you have to. It's called When They Cry. So when they cry, you will go to your original world. So even when I met Satoko at the school gate and said good morning, only to be bluntly ignored like always, it didn't make me sad. The real Satoko was an incomparable friend of mine. Even if a fake Satoko ignored me, it wouldn't hurt me inside anymore. Oh my god, I'm so right, aren't I? Mion wasn't outright cold like Satoko was, but she didn't seem to think of me as any more than one of her many classmates. There's like 10, right? Rena seemed like she was actually trying to talk to me, but that was because I was isolated. She was acting out of a kind of pity, and it seemed sadder to accept that. It's so ironic. If I'm right, this means Rena is unconsciously closer to the truth than Bern is. And I'm still gonna call her Bern just for the sake of it. I mean, she did name herself that after all. I actually thought of this too between last episode and this one, but naming yourself after something that means a lot to you is so NB core of her, it's unreal. So I'd started reacting nastily to Rena's unwanted attention. After just a few exchanges like that, she realized I didn't want her doing this and stopped bothering me. And you've pushed yourself even further. Being all alone wasn't sad anymore. It was only natural I'd be alone as an outsider to this false world. In fact, the less annoying acquaintances I needed, the easier it was for me. That's right, easier. When I started feeling that way, then even if nobody talked to me during lunch, nobody invited me to eat with them, and nobody asked me to play after school, I was totally okay with it. With so few students in the classroom, I took out a book not related to the class. Oh, if I took a book out a book not related to the class, Chie would confiscate it right away. I probably wouldn't be able to read the old documents while she was teaching. Good thing you don't have to. So all I could do was wrap them in covers I made from flipping over leaflets and folding them, and spend my free time at school pretending I was reading a regular book. We weren't allowed to bring comics to school, but the unspoken agreement was that you could read novels as long as you didn't do it during class. Why wouldn't you be allowed to read a book during your free time? Rika's read a few Bern Castle's read a few books. If I could just ignore the hustle and bustle, lunch break was the time I could focus the most. Somewhere in those countless worlds, there was a time when I got bored with my daily life and read a lot of old documents. Thanks to that, I knew the gist of their contents. I just hoped there was a clue somewhere in them about the fragment rejecting Hanyu from this world. Because you're not letting friends in! It had been... That's so fucking... I'm so right? It's too perfect. If that's not right, I'm gonna be disappointed. Jesus. It had been raining since midday. I hope it starts raining IRL. Not in the fake world. All of my classmates had stayed in the classroom for break, venting their pent-up energy indoors. Thanks to that, it was a bothersome, loud, and uncomfortable day for me. What's with that gloomy look? What are you reading? At the same time as those words, my old document was taken from me. And there was Satoko's face, smiling evilly. Okay, whatever's about to happen is totally what I think is about to happen, right? What the heck? I can't read this. Satoko looked at the old document she'd stolen from me with disgust. Well, someone as ignorant as Satoko had no way to understand it. I'd learned how to read classical Japanese from my father, and even I had to go over each line several times to figure it out. Of course, for Satoko, it wasn't about what it said. She seemed more amused at how unsanitary it looked, with dirty letters written on dirty paper. But even if it was nothing more than a filthy book to her, to me it was something that could hold a clue. When I tried to snatch it back, she threw it to another friend as though she'd seen the attempt coming miles away. What is this? Eek, it's gross. The girl who caught it threw it to another kid. And that kid, after his face scrunched up at the filth being given to him, grinned like an idiot and threw it to someone else. Over here! Pass it! Over here! Even Mion is playing along with it? Jeez. Mion-san! Pass! Several of my classmates threw it amongst themselves whenever I chased after it, teasing me. Why would Mion play it? That feels out of character, but whatever. At some point, Mion had joined their circle, and it had turned into classroom-wide bullying. Today wasn't the first time this had happened. Actually, maybe before I came here, it was always like this. Even in a classroom with just 10 people, an order existed and so did cliques. Belonging to none, and not wanting to, I was the weakling in the room, and thus clearly the one it was okay to torment. Rena was the only one who said they should stop, but nobody listened to her. My classmates wanted to fool around, and they probably wanted to tell her that I was the only toy in the room, so why shouldn't they play with her during lunch break? But in the last few days, it had left heartwarming territory and moved into aggravating territory. This Satoko clearly treated me with spite. When I thought about it now, the accident with the ball in the schoolyard that brought me into this world, she'd obviously been aiming for Rika, who had just been standing there in the yard. Was Satoko always this oblivious to the pain of others? She'd understood people's pain best, because even though she said mean things, she'd been through the worst of anyone. I see. In this world, Satoko's parents were alive, and the villagers didn't torment her. In other words, she hadn't been through the worst of anyone. Personality isn't wholly determined from birth. It's also something cultivated over many events and experiences. True! This is like the first actually true thing Rika's said, or Bern has said all episode. With all her lucky dice rolls, this was how Satoko's personality had turned out in this world. In other words, this Satoko was only the same on the outside, but a completely different person from my best friend on the inside. But you'll eventually learn that's not true, because you already said that about Rena, right? And Mion, did she? I don't know. Once I understood that, the sadness of Satoko tormenting me disappeared. And in its place, she began to look like a horrible brat just getting in the way of my haste to return to my original world. Don't bother me. I don't care what any of you do in this lunatic world. But I'm desperately working to return to my original one. So stay out of my way.
Come on, Furude-san! Over here, over here!
The old document made its way back to Satoko again. This time, Satoko started teasing me, waving it around and saying to come get it. She held her nose and made a sour face like she was holding up something filthy, earning laughs and jeers from the rest of class. I went straight for Satoko, and, of course, she threw it to the next one in line. She must have thought it would make me go over there next, but that wasn't my goal. But I didn't care about where the document was. Instead, I charged straight at Satoko. I tucked my nails into the bases of my fingers and clenched my fist. I decided this was the fastest method to explain how important this was, make her understand, and prevent any reprisals, all in a very short period of time. I swung my right fist at Satoko's face. The tip of my fist plowed into her face below her left eye, leaving an imprint that wouldn't soon disappear. Yeah, I was right. I promptly grabbed a clump of her hair and pushed her to the floor, then took a nearby chair and raised it over my head before smashing it into her a few times. Yeah, just as I thought. Satoko didn't know what had just happened. Confused by the sudden violence, she just curled up like a turtle. It looked a little crazy, hitting her with a chair like this, but it wouldn't hurt her very badly. I raised the chair and slammed it down over top of Satoko's upper body. Where's Satoshi during this? Wouldn't he have stopped Satoko from doing all this? And also stop Rika now? Not to mention Rena and Mion. Exactly as if to hold her to the ground. I lifted my foot above the chair and stomped on it like I was hammering in a nail. Satoko, you're being a little annoying. I was tolerating you since you look like a friend of mine. But that shrill voice of yours is really starting to get on my nerves. If you come within 1 meter of me, I'll punch you right away. No excuses. Hope that's alright. Are you listening? I stomped on the chair again and finally saw an expression of fear arrive on Satoko's face. I knew this was the best answer. It's literally the worst one. But that's how stories are written. Sometimes the protagonist fucks up. When given the chance, I had to give it to her straight. But it made me mad. I was the last one in the world who wanted to see Satoko looking like that. I was the one who was forcing her to make that expression. It made me sick. But it was fine in the end. This Satoko wasn't the one I knew after all. And one day, I'd leave this world for sure. Even if I killed her on the spot, it wouldn't have anything to do with the Satoko of my world. But they can remember other fragments, which is also something she's forgetting. Keiichi remembering Onikakushi. Rena, I think, also remembered Onikakushi at one point, right? I can't remember if she did. But regardless, that's why it didn't hurt inside at all seeing her look at me so terrified.
Come on, give Rika-chan her book back. Here, Rika-chan.
Rena plucked the document from a bewildered classmate and returned it to me.
So forgive Satoko-chan, okay? You went a little too far.
And stealing my important book and cutting into my precious reading time wasn't going too far.
That isn't what I meant.
You don't have anything to do with this, so step aside. I just wanted to get this back. I kicked the chair over, indicating to Satoko that she'd been released. but even that action made her so scared that she was frozen in place. I didn't waste time going back to my own seat. Then Satoko began to bawl shamelessly, and Satoshi ran over. He is in the room? What the fuck? Making a big overprotective fuss about the nurse's office and whatnot. The noise quickly reached the faculty room, and Chie and the principal soon burst in. Are you alright, Satoko-san? This might leave a bruise. Might? Satoshi-kun, please take her to the nurse's office and have her rest. I'll call Yamamoto-sensei. While Chie was talking, the principal must have asked Mion what had happened in the classroom. Mion spoke to him in hushed tones, glancing my way. She was probably saying she had no part in this. Nasty Mion might say that. She didn't betray my expectation. The principal came over to me and told me to come with him to the principal's office. This usually happens when a bullied child happens to bully back. A side effect of the bullying, perhaps, yeah? I mean, that is true. It's happened to me on a couple occasions, though I wasn't, like, egregiously bullied. I have been punished for being bullied by some fuckers. I'm never going to forget, or forgive, the principal of my middle school, or any of the other faculty there. One day in 6th grade, I was punched in the hallway by a kid, and they gave me a week of lunch detention because I instigated him by calling him annoying. Schools are very rational. As for what punishment he got, he was suspended for 1 week. I don't get it either. I was seriously fed up with everything, but my goal had only been to scare Satoko off from bothering me ever again. Now that I'd done that, I decided I needed to calm the situation down. After being brought to the principal's office, he kept asking me why I punched Satoko, and lectured me that violence was never the answer. But regarding her taking my book and tormenting me, he admitted she was at fault, and I felt a little relieved.
This is a fairly difficult book. Is it from your house, Furude-kun?
Yes, something like that.
I don't dislike classical Japanese, but this one seems fairly difficult. Can you read this?
If I couldn't, I wouldn't have been reading it. Is she still using Bern Castle voice? I don't know. I don't know if she ever was.
You do have a point. Would you mind telling me a little bit about what's written in here?
His behavior wasn't one out of interest in the book, so much as an act dripping with pity. Like he wanted to ease the mind of someone alienated and bullied in class a little. Okay, fair enough. Accepting that would do nothing but further amplify my current unhappiness. I don't want friends anyway, and I don't want you to be my friend either, Sensei. May I leave now? I want to continue reading as soon as possible.
Furude-kun, it's good to read books, but don't you think you should play with your friends once in a while?
My friends are somewhere else, far away. They're not here, so I don't care.
Does that hand hurt at all?
Huh? Oh. I didn't realize it until the principal pointed it out. I must have scraped the skin on my hand when I punched Satoko as hard as I could. A little bit of blood was seeping from my right fist.
Yamamoto-sensei is in the nurse's office, so go see him and get that bandaged up.
I will.
Furude-kun, school isn't only for studying. It's also for making friends.
I am so fucking right. I am always right, y'all.
I'd like you to take that too.
Excuse me. Bow. This world's principal wasn't the principal who was allowed to lecture me, so I didn't have any desire to listen. On my way to the nurse's office, I passed the classroom. I met eyes with several students inside, but they immediately looked away. Maybe this will work out. I'm more comfortable with them being scared than teasing me. When I went into the nurse's office, the doctor was just putting a big piece of absorbent cotton under Satoko's eye. Chie, who was with her, looked at me, then walked over with a scary look on her face. Okay, you two. Satoko-san apologized for taking her book. And Furude-san apologized for punching her. Not the chair stuff, though. That was sick. Satoko, who had been scared and weak in the face of the sudden violence earlier, must have calmed down, since she now looked dejected. She looked like it didn't make sense to her, how she was only teasing me a little and then I suddenly went crazy for no reason and hit her. If she was like that, there was no way she would apologize first. Of course, I had no duty to apologize either, so I wouldn't apologize first. Come on, both of you! You're going to stay here until you apologize to one another. Chie yelled at us. Clearly making a sour face, I held my bleeding fist out to Yamamoto.
Oh, you're bleeding. Take a seat. I'll disinfect it.
Both of you? Are you not listening to your teacher? Apologize! I sensed that if we kept making Chie mad, she might tell us to stay after school. What did she think this was? Like how I'd let some school I don't care about do their little lecturing nonsense at me. Every second of every minute is precious. I can't waste a single one. Once I understood that, I was the first to act. As Yamamoto disinfected the wound, I smoothly gave her my apology. Hojo-san, I'm sorry for punching you and stuff. Even I was appalled at how insincere my apology was. Chie probably felt the same way, but she at least appreciated the words. See, Furude-san apologized. Satoko-san, you apologize too. I'm very sorry for taking your book and playing a joke on you. Satoko's own apology was no less disingenuous than mine. I glared straight into Satoko's eyes, warning her to never bother me again. But Satoko was in her rebellious phase. It would take a lot more than that to make her wince. She returned my glare in kind, as if to say she'd get me back next time. Chie sighed, unable to do much about our insincere apologies. And then the bell signaling the end of lunch break rang. Why wouldn't they have, like... they must be contacting Rika's parents, right? Like, that's gonna be a whole thing. Satoko-san, let's go back to the classroom. Furude-san, you come back as soon as you're patched up. Chie followed Satoko and left the nurse's office. I didn't give them so much as a glance and just held my right hand out to Yamamoto. The stinging pain of the disinfectant was somehow weak. The hand receiving treatment didn't even feel like my hand. I suppose it wouldn't. It's Rika Furude's hand, not mine.
Everyone must feel lonely that school is ending next year. Aren't you?
I'm so fucking right, y'all. No, not really.
After living here your whole lives, your homeland will sink into a lake. That has to be sad. I understand how you all feel.
That must have been Yamamoto's interpretation of the strained atmosphere in the classroom. If he was convinced of that, then maybe it was fine. It didn't matter to me.
Even you had a lot of friends until not too long ago. But everyone you got along with happened to transfer schools at the same time. I'm no stranger to how sad it feels to be suddenly left alone.
That's an interesting parallel. She went away from her friends, and her friends went away from her. Interesting. Friends I got along with?
Tomita-kun and Okamura-kun and the rest, of course. You always spent time with the boys since you got along with them, didn't you? I think they were pretty partial to you as the only girl in their group, though.
I see. Even Rika Furude had friends for a while in this world. And thanks to a stroke of bad luck, they all transferred out together and left her behind.
But they're not your only friends out there, right? I understand how lonely you feel. And you may only know them until next year. But I think it would be good for you to make friends with the other kids in class and enjoy your time with them.
I don't want to get close to them. My real friends, as you said, they went far away. Very, very far away. All I want is to go there.
When did you start talking so much like a grown-up, Rika-chan?
I guess I just feel like it.
Ever since you got knocked out by the ball the other day, I feel like your expressions have grown darker. I'm worried about you.
I didn't know how close this Yamamoto man was to Rika Furude, nor how much of her he knew. but he's definitely perceptive. I guess as a doctor should be. But judging from his words, he seemed to be the kind of adult who understood children's feelings, just like Irie in the previous world. When that ball hit her... Oh, okay. Probably Bern voice. When that ball hit her, I think Rika Furude died.
If that was all it took to die, nobody could play dodgeball. If you died back then, wouldn't that make you a corpse?
Yamamoto laughed a little, but not completely to tease me. It was just to urge me further along. So Yamamoto wasn't just a doctor at the nurse's office, but a mental counselor for students at a susceptible age. It looked like he wasn't Irie's replacement for nothing. For some reason, I felt like opening up a little to him. Maybe it was because he didn't exist in the world I knew. Right now, everyone who was in the world I knew, no matter who it was, made me uncomfortable. That was why I felt like opening up specifically to someone who wasn't in that world. Well, he's somewhere. After all, Yamamoto probably thought I was just a girl hitting puberty. Whatever nonsense I spouted, he would nod and agree. I'm not the Rika Furude you and the others know.
What does that mean? Who are you then?
For now, I've decided to take the name Bernkastel. If I called myself Rika Furude, it would be rude to the person who originally had this body.
Bern? A German name? It's almost like you're a space alien. Where did you come from?
From a different world. If I had to compare it, it's like a world of what-ifs. It's still Hinamizawa, but its history and composition are completely different. In this world, they move forward with the dam project, and the villagers decided to leave. But in my world, it's different. The villagers stood up together to defeat the project. And then the government froze it indefinitely. That's the kind of world I came from.
Then the Hinamizawa you came from won't end up underwater.
That's right. Even after 1983, we would keep living there peacefully.
Sounds like a nice Hinamizawa. I've taken a liking to this area as well, so the eviction is really painful for me. I suppose I'm jealous of the Hinamizawa in the world you say you came from. Could you tell me more about the one in that world?
The first step in counseling was to agree to whatever absurd story the patient came out with. If I didn't know that piece of trivia, I might have teared up at Yamamoto telling me to continue. But I couldn't resist the temptation to keep going. He encouraged me, and I kept talking. In that world, there was a big protest movement we called the Dam Conflict, and it took years for them to withdraw the proposal. And through that conflict, the villagers came together. Everyone got along. All the students were friends, and we even had transfer students come in from outside of the village. And we made a club where we would play games with Mion as the president. And while Satoko was very unfortunate, she was good friends with me. And then...
Poor Satoko-chan. Why did the village have to bully her like that? If everyone was happy, they shouldn't have been mean to her. They should have let her into their happy circle.
They don't say those things to be mean. That's just how my world is. And she might have had a more painful fate than this world's Satoko. But that one was my best friend, and couldn't replace or compare with anyone. So seeing the way Satoko is in this world makes me madder than it should.
You can't tolerate her being mean to you when she looks the same as your real friend?
Yes. Yamamoto heaved a heavy sigh, then stared out the window with his arms folded. It looked like the rain outside had let up somewhat, but it was still drizzling. After keeping a silence for a few moments, Yamamoto spoke up.
What you're saying is, this isn't your world?
That's right. I need to get back to my original world, because this one isn't mine.
I can see why you'd want to return to such a fun-sounding Hinamizawa as soon as you could. But is there even a way to do that?
There is, but it's very hard to find.
I see. And what do you have to do?
A fragment is lost somewhere in Hinamizawa, I think. Because of that fragment, Hanyu, or I should say, Oyashiro-sama, can't come to this world and bring me back.
Oyashiro-sama? You mean the deity worshipped at the Furude Shrine?
It would take too long to explain, but basically, yes. I've traveled through countless worlds with her. This world just happens to be one of the ones I drifted to. So as soon as she can get here, I plan on leaving.
That escalated pretty quickly. In other words, normally you and Oyashiro-sama would come to this world together. But Oyashiro-sama, the one with the power to bring you out of this world, can't get in for some reason. Which means you've been left behind, like a boat that drifted ashore, left behind.
Generally speaking, yes. The fragment blocking her is somewhere in Hinamizawa. If I don't find it and burn it, I can't go back to my old world.
Where might that fragment be?
Somewhere. A fragment is feelings, so it has to be something with those in it. I don't know what kind of object it resides in, and there's no proof it's in an object at all. It could be inside a person. I just don't know.
You said you'd burn it if it was an object, right? What would you do if it was a person?
Hanyu said if it was a person, killing them would amount to the same thing.
Alright, you're opening up too much now, Bern. Like, I understand, but you're going to a fucking mental institution now that you said that.
I'm praying the fragment isn't residing in a person.
Who is this Hanyu? A new character?
Oh, it's another name for Oyashiro-sama. Hanyu is actually her real name. I think Oyashiro-sama was just a name the villagers gave her later on.
I see. Was that written in the book you were reading?
No, not exactly. Yamamoto's arms remained folded, and he groaned in thought. Another silence settled, with rain being the only audible sound. Maybe I'd gotten nervous. I knew it wouldn't solve anything to talk about it, but I did anyway. Yamamoto was probably wondering if something was wrong with my brain. I could guess that by looking at his complicated expression.
Do you think you'll find the fragment?
I don't know. Since it can interfere with Hanyu, I figured there would be a clue in something related to Oyashiro-sama, which is why I was reading those old documents. I was searching for a clue to search for the fragment, basically.
I see. I do hope you find it. But if it was a person, what would you do? You wouldn't really kill them, would you?
It's hard to answer when you put it like that, but if that was the only way to return to my old world, I might not hesitate. After all, from my world's point of view, this world is just a delusion, a daydream. Whoever dies here, they'll be alive in my world, so it doesn't matter.
I see. But hold on a moment. This world might be just a dream to you, but it's the real world for me. It wouldn't be good if someone was killed, no matter who it was.
I understand your logic, and I want nothing more than to get out of here without having to kill someone.
Let's get back on track. This Hanyu, who tells you about how to go back to your old world, how does she tell you that? Is this something like a divine message, or does she appear in your dreams?
No, nothing that vague. I talk to her. There's a crystal ball that acts as a communicator between us.
Would I be able to talk to this Hanyu as well?
That would be the fastest way. If he could talk to Hanyu directly, that would be enough to prove my nonsense true. But I felt uneasy. Even if I could talk to her, Yamamoto might not be able to. Those kinds of magic items come up pretty often in stories. But maybe it was worth a shot trying. I took the crystal ball out of my pocket. It's obviously not gonna work for him, right? That or it's gonna work perfect, right?
That marble is the communicator.
That's what it looks like, right? I thought the same thing. The crystal ball's light was extremely weak. As it got dimmer, it was also taking longer to restore lately. After talking to her several days ago and the light weakened again, it was having a hard time recovering. This much light wasn't quite enough. It looked like it needed a little bit more time to recover. Can you see light in this marble?
I wonder. Maybe it's just reflecting light. But it is very pretty. Is it from a Ramune bottle?
Of course not. It's a Furude Shrine treasure, called the Kamu no something, and we should be grateful for it. It's rude of me to say, but I agree that it looks like a Ramune bottle marble to me, too.
From the Furude Shrine. So how do you use this to talk to Hanyu?
I put it to my forehead. When I do, I can hear her voice. Yamamoto immediately tried. He shut his eyes and let out a low groan. It probably wouldn't work. I couldn't tell if it was because it wasn't me or because the power was too weak.
I'm sorry, but I can't hear anything. What about you?
It needs to recover a certain amount of power to talk to Hanyu. Let me have it. Doesn't work for me either. You can't hear Hanyu's voice if the crystal ball doesn't have all its power. I pushed it tightly against my forehead, but all I felt was a cool sensation. I couldn't feel the power in it.
I see. That's a shame.
In a few days, some of the power should return. If you give me time, I'm sure I'll be able to talk to her again. If you let me try again, then.
I see. Then, once you can talk to her, would you mind letting me talk as well?
Yes, of course. At this rate, you'll think I'm crazy in the head, and it will all be over. It would leave me a bad taste in my mouth if I didn't clear up such a rude misunderstanding.
How long does it take for the crystal ball's divine power to recover?
Not much longer, I think. Might even be fine after one more night. Once its power comes back, I'll tell you.
Thank you. I'll be waiting. If you do let me talk to Hanyu, how about I help you go back to your old world, too? Does that sound good?
Really? The simple word help made a deep impression on my mind. If someone other than Hanyu were around to understand me, it would obviously be a reassurance. And with two people, the time it would take to go through piles of literature would be halved. I'd welcome the help of a cat at this point, so I was really glad. On the other hand, I had to think about what Yamamoto felt. For Yamamoto, right now, I was a dangerous person who said she might even commit murder over a delusion. He was only speaking to me in such an understanding way to try and keep communication going. It didn't mean he actually believed me. But if Hanyu and Yamamoto could talk, it would clear all those fears away, and then he'd have to believe in the supernatural phenomena of Hanyu and me. But the real world didn't usually work out that well. After all, even if I made Hanyu talk to him, it could end in the way it always does, with Yamamoto not hearing anything. Yeah, that's true. I could convey what she was saying, but he wouldn't believe it. But that didn't mean I had the option of not trying. I wouldn't give up before doing it. I'd try everything. Wasn't that the lesson I'd learned from this 100-year journey? Yeah, and there's something you should try. Making friends. Promise me. If you can talk to Hanyu, you have to believe me. Even though all she says is ow ow and doesn't really act like a god.
I promise. If you let me talk to Hanyu, I'll believe your story. But if I can't talk to her, what will you do?
I didn't actually think he'd reply like that, and it confused me. What do you mean, what will I do?
I promise to believe your story if you win. Then why not promise me that if I win, you'll believe my story? That sounds fair, doesn't it?
What story do you want me to believe? Well, I could imagine it without having to ask. He'd probably tell me to go to a largish hospital and have my head given a proper look at. Of course, there's absolutely nothing wrong with my head, so it would come up with 0 results. When that happened, maybe they'd say I needed to take care of my mind and give me psychotropic drugs or something. I heard this from Rena once before. There's a drug that makes you incredibly lethargic, unable to do or even think anything at all. Dangerous patients think terrible things, and sometimes actually do them. The drugs stopped that from happening. If they made me take that, it would be the same as killing me. It might seem like a fair condition, but to me, it looked like the scales weren't in my favor to begin with. I shouldn't have told this stuff to a man I barely knew. After all that, I began to regret my decision. Could I fool him if I said it was all a joke? Did you believe me, Nipa? If that was going to be my last resort, I could use it if my attempt to have Yamamoto and Hanyu communicate failed. I couldn't abandon the possibility that Yamamoto could be my ally without trying first.
Then I'll keep a slot open tomorrow just for you, Rika-chan. Does that sound good?
He made his suggestion, taking a notebook out of his coat and going over his other appointments. I nodded and said I agreed. Oh boy, chapter split. But we're still continuing. Alright. This shit's good. Not specifically the water. I did just take a sip of water. But, yeah. This arc in particular, I don't know. It's just vibing with me a lot. Alright. Hi, Satoshi. Rika-chan, do you have a moment? After school, as I was about to head home before the rain started up again, Satoshi called out to me. I looked up and saw Mion and Rena with him. I'd been stopped by the upperclassmen brigade. Dun dun dun. Oh boy, it's the primary color squad. Well, green is not a primary color, but whatever. Pretend it's blue for now. Their expression, and orange isn't it. Whatever. Their expressions weren't exactly gentle ones, and I suspected I was in for some sort of punishment after what I did during lunch break. Do you need something from me? Yeah, we wanted to talk to you a little. About lunch break. Well, that too, I'm sorry for hitting Satoko with the chair and stuff. I spoke the words fine, but didn't bother to hide my glum attitude.
Please don't be scared, Rika-chan. We're not here to scold you or anything like that.
Then why are you...
Well, I'll say it straight. We need to talk about how to get along with everyone from now on. It's just... I just want you to understand something. Some of the responsibility for things ending up this way belongs to you, Rika-chan.
Mion, you didn't have to say that.
I think it's an upperclassman's duty to explain these things. Isn't it?
This conversation didn't look like it would be a fun one. If I blew them off, it would probably only get worse, so I decided to just pretend I was listening. Rena took my silence for me being dispirited, and she started speaking in a much more lighthearted tone.
Rika-chan, don't you think it would be great if you could make friends with everyone and have lots of fun playing with them? So, we were thinking about what we could do so you could get along with everybody. What do you think about that? What do you?
I don't know. You may not know this, Rika-chan, but Mion, she collects a lot of games, right? I knew it.
Well, it's an old hobby of mine. When I was little, I collected a ton of board games and card games for some reason. I haven't bothered with them at all recently, but I couldn't just get rid of them, so I have the whole lot piled up in storage.
She has all these fun games, but she won't play them with anyone, so they're just collecting dust. What a waste, right? I want to play that British burglar game where the thief puts on sunglasses.
I want to try the game where you connect tree branches like building blocks.
But all the manuals are in English. That Shion, reading those manuals was the only thing she was good at. Too bad she died.
What? That's a weird thing that's different about this world. Maybe not everyone is as unfortunate as me. I guess since I'm not the one who's worst off in this world, I guess it's fine for me to be a piece of shit to everyone.
We could just ask her, but she goes to another school far away.
Then we should all try to figure them out together. I'm sure that will be fun.
That's true. If we all play by the same rules, then even if we're wrong, it'll still be fair.
Well, doesn't that sound fun? We were thinking about starting an after-school game club.
A club? For games? Everyone in class can play. And while you're playing with everyone, I'm sure you'll eventually become part of their circle before you know it, Rika-chan.
In other words, this is your upperclassman being considerate and giving you the chance to fit in. That's a way of putting it.
Again, Mion, you don't have to say it like that.
I felt a little sorry for you lately, but I actually think some of your current isolation is your own fault, Rika-chan. True!
My own fault? Rena and Satoshi fell silent after hearing that. I guess everyone in class shares Mion's opinion. My own fault. Of course, though this was about me, I had no idea what they meant by that. They were talking about the Rika Furude before I came. To me, she was the same as a stranger. But to them, it must have seemed like my surprised tone was just me not understanding because I was young. They sighed a little. It was an unpleasant sigh, like they were telling me to look at myself. I wanted to be freed from this as soon as possible.
Before everyone moved away, Rika-chan, you were kinda like a princess, weren't you?
I was a princess?
Yep, a princess. Rika-chan, you were like a princess to that group of boys. You had them wrapped around your little finger. You didn't even need to do anything, you just let them act for you. Do you remember Tomita-kun and Okamura-kun? They seemed to like you a lot, so they'd do whatever you told them to. You just sat on your reputation unconcerned. And you do things like make the boys who liked you compete, so you could always get the best deal like a war profiteer. A lot of kids didn't think that was very fair. So when those boys all moved out at the same time, by coincidence, and only you were left behind, some of those kids thought you got what you deserved.
None of that was about me.
Rika-chan, we're talking about you. Please listen to what Mi-chan is saying.
I am.
No, you're not. Rika-chan, you think it doesn't have anything to do with you. Am I right?
Whether Rena or Rena, she was still just as sharp about the weirdest things. I wanted to believe it was just a wild guess, but she had hit the nail right on the head. Rena, you stop too. I think Rika-chan has thought about it enough already.
I wonder... She still hasn't said so. Seems to me like she didn't realize it until we told her.
Come on, stop it. We're not here to bully Rika-chan. We really want her to be friends with everyone, right? That means we all have to work hard to change our relationships with each other. For some reason, I was upset. Because it was as though they weren't talking about Rika Furude, but about me. Me. A princess. There was no guarantee I wasn't one until now. Loved the most of all the club members, Rena and the boys in the class pampering me, laughing at Satoko and Keiichi's failures as I coolly profited from their conflict. Without giving anything myself, I just greedily devoured the goodwill people poured upon me. They were right. That was me. I hadn't wanted to accept this sad, lonely world and set myself apart. But of course, they couldn't have actually been talking about me. So, though I didn't know the reason, I was still upset. We were thinking of having Satoko join the club too. She's really stubborn, so she won't say it, but she wants to get along with you, Rika-chan.
How does that sound? Do you want to try being in our game club, Rika-chan? I'm sure it will be a lot of fun.
Or, think of it this way. Do you want to start putting in a little bit of effort to change yourself?
Some things might be awkward at first, but I'm sure you'll get along with everyone sooner or later. After all, everyone wants to be your friend, and if you want to be their friend too, then you're both reaching out your hands. I'm sure you'll meet in the middle.
And look, we're already reaching out to you. All you have to do is grab hold, Rika-chan. I felt like Keiichi said something a lot like that in some other world. Yup, Sumi Horoboshi. Those words probably made Rika Furude really happy. But that wasn't me. That was to Rena. Bro. All this only applied to the Rika Furude from before I possessed this body. For me, this world was fake, a dream world. And besides, I was in the middle of a hunt. I didn't have time to hang out with them. But they weren't faking their feelings for Rika Furude, and I found myself without an answer, at a loss for how to respond to them.
We're sorry, Rika-chan. To tell the truth, when we went to wash our hands and you were talking with Yamamoto-sensei in the nurse's office, we might have overheard you a tiny bit.
Rena gave me an apologetic look. I never thought others would be listening to that conversation, which must have sounded like garbled nonsense to anyone from this world. I'd understand if it weirded them out and they didn't want to come near me, but I couldn't quite understand why it had resulted in this, because I heard the part where you mentioned the club, right?
The world you were talking about, Rika-chan, it sounds like a really fun world, where everyone gets along together. You said you wanted to go back there, right, Rika-chan? So we talked and thought about how we could bring you back there.
Still, it's not like we can call back Tomita-kun and Okamura-kun now that they moved.
Yep, I think everyone wants to go back to that old world, but I think that's definitely impossible.
Yeah, they think it's a metaphor, which is fair. Huh? That startled me. There was no way Rena knew about me and my old world. Even still, her words felt full of meaning, and they echoed in my heart.
You can gather all the fragments of the cup together, but they're just fragments. Once it breaks, you can't go back to the way it was.
Yeah, she thinks that's all a metaphor. That just shows how optimistic she really is, right?
But there's more than one cup. It's a shame the cup broke, but you can always look for another one. But if you look down at the broken cup forever, you'll never, ever find it.
Here's what we mean, Rika-chan. You can't let your good friends who moved away... You can't get your good friends who moved away to come back here. So you just have to make new friends who are just as good as they were.
I think a world like that would be really close to the one you came from, Rika-chan. It wouldn't be exactly the same, of course, but I think it's as close as you're going to get.
And by doing that, you can make even stronger relationships than you had before. You know what they say? When it rains, the ground gets harder, or something like that anyway. What do you think, Rika-chan? We'll help out, so you can make new friends quickly. Would you like to give it a try? Those gentle words would have been tear-worthy if they'd been said to this world's Rika Furude. But now that I had possessed her, she was gone. The Rika Furude they were talking to was no longer of this world. I thought to myself that I should just give this body back to her. If I did, the me living in this remote parallel universe would have the chance to change her fate and make this world a happy one, if only little by little. If I went back to my old world and gave this leftover body back to Rika Furude, wait, what? Oh, yeah, okay, it wasn't a period, it was a sentence fragment. Fragment. But I couldn't do that. Because for me to leave this world would require the same method as returning the fragment from this world to the world of the gods. But you're so close! In other words, my death. Only my death could make me go away. Which meant at the point I took over for Rika Furude, she was the same as dead. But maybe, just maybe, there was one way to return this body to Rika Furude. That would be for me to die a different way. I wasn't a parasite or anything. In difficult to understand terms, I was an individual personality aware of other universes. Or maybe I should call myself a memory aware of other universes. And that meant that if I could forget about the other worlds, that would represent the same thing as me dying. This world was the only world for Rika Furude, and she would live the best she could in it. If so, I would gradually forget. eventually losing my grasp on which world I had lived in, and try my hardest to live in the world I was in now. Which meant that giving up on my previous world and living in this one was possible simply if I decided to do it. Like Rena said, it might be a different world than my old one, but it was the closest I could ever get. It might be a little different from my old world, but the club would still form. In exchange for Keiichi and half our classmates, Satoshi was here. I wasn't best friends with Satoko, but depending on how we interacted in the future, we could at least become regular friends. Hinamizawa would sink underwater in another 6 months, but I could work hard to make new friends in my new home. That cruel destiny wasn't Rika Furude's alone. It was an impartial destiny, shared equally by all who lived in this world. Only I had the luxury of being a special case and jumping between destinies at a whim. I didn't know. Which world should I devote myself to? Reina's words came back to me. A broken cup never went back to normal, and I couldn't find another one as long as I was lamenting the first. What did the cup represent? Cups were for filling with water. The water could probably be called happiness. The cup broke and the happiness inside was scattered everywhere. The cup was broken, and I was at a loss, unable to fill it with happiness again. But if I could change the way I thought, and rather than be attached to the broken cup forever, fill a new cup with new happiness, it could open the door to a new world. Still, while that world might be similar, it wouldn't be the same. My heart had weakened, and I'd been discouraged. Wasn't this only so tempting because my search for the key to go back was so difficult? Before, didn't I swear I'd put in any effort I needed to return to my old world? If I broke that oath, Hanyu, gambling on my fate, would be left behind for all eternity, all alone, and I'd be the only one so selfishly happy. While I didn't have any responsibility to make Hanyu happy, she was my ally and partner who stuck with me for 100 years, and my friend. So even if I wanted to give in to temptation, I'd have to ask Hanyu. Which meant, right now, I had no right to answer their proposal. Really? Thank you. I'm very happy. It's alright. We'll protect you. So let's make lots of good memories before we have to leave. I think I should go back to Rika voice, right? No, well, could you give me time to prepare my feelings? What? What's with that girlish response all of a sudden? It's not like Satoshi just asked you out on a date or anything. Okay.
Michan, that wasn't necessary. I can understand how she feels, just a little. So we'll wait for you to prepare your feelings, Rika-chan. Thank you. If I do accept, then please, let this Rika Furude be one of your friends. I bowed apologetically. Here and now, that was the most I could do. That was super sweet. Alright, I think I'm going to end this episode here. Not as long as last episode, but still a pretty beefy one, even though the first 12 minutes or so was, you know, talking, not reading. But I digress. This chapter is so fucking good. I don't know what it is about it, but I'm shocked at how good this is. I mean, it's the same quality of writing as Higurashi proper, but I don't know, there's something special about this one, and I don't know why. I feel almost bad saying that, but like, I don't know, I'm vibing with this hardcore. Yeah. Either way, that's gonna be it for this episode. If you liked it, then be sure to press the like button, and if you didn't like it, then fuck you too. Remember to subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and hit that notification bell to stay up to date on all my videos and stuff.
And as always, my name is Godzi, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye! Yeah.